Heavy rainfall pounded the asphalt, creating small pools of water that reflected the flickering glow of overhead street lamps. Drawing his inadequate coat closer around him, Ethan leaned against the diner's brick exterior. Joe's establishment had been shut for several hours already. According to the window sign, the business would reopen at 6 in the morning, though that felt impossibly distant. At 16 years old, shivering and alone, he'd been surviving independently for 3 full days. When Ethan pressed his ribs, he grimaced in pain. His father's most recent violent episode had left marks that remained tender, their color shifting from dark purple toward a sickly yellowish tint along the perimeter. Pulling everything from his pocket, he examined his entire fortune. $27 consisted of 2 $10 bills, 1 $5, and a pair of singles. While the amount wouldn't take him very far, it beat returning to his house. The aroma of cooked food drifting from the nearby truck stop triggered hunger pangs in his belly. Since morning, his only sustenance had been a single candy bar purchased at a filling station 50 miles behind him. A large 18-wheeler thundered by, its tires sending water from a puddle that nearly drenched his deteriorating sneakers. Ethan leaped backward at the last second. A harsh voice shouted, "Keep moving or get moving." A patrol vehicle crept past slowly, the uniformed driver scrutinizing him with distrust through the rain-covered glass. Ethan acknowledged him with a nod and began walking forward. He couldn't risk complications with law enforcement. They might contact his father, which would result in returning to a residence where doors crashed shut and punches were thrown, where his younger sister Emma sobbed herself into unconsciousness most evenings, while their father consumed alcohol until becoming furious on the opposite side of the road. A 24-hour shop's illumination shone like a lighthouse. The flickering sign announced, "Last Stop Mini Mart," with one character blinking on and off. Ethan calculated the coins in his possession. Perhaps he could purchase hot coffee and remain indoors temporarily, at minimum until the precipitation subsided. When he pushed the entrance open, a bell above the door chimed. Heat struck his cheeks along with the odor of overcooked coffee mixed with cleaning chemicals. Behind the register, an elderly gray-haired man stood absorbed in his magazine, hardly glancing upward. Ethan filled a small cup with coffee, mixing in 4 sugar packets plus abundant cream to extend its duration. The heated container felt pleasant against his frozen fingers. After paying the cashier, he located a position near the glass where he could observe the falling rain. Various midnight customers entered and departed. An exhausted truck driver purchasing energy beverages. A woman wearing medical scrubs grabbing dairy products while heading home from her hospital shift. Ethan consumed his coffee gradually, prolonging its consumption. Every moment he remained inside meant one less moment enduring the cold outside. That's when she caught his attention. A girl approximately his age stood near the refrigeration units wearing an oversized black leather jacket that appeared too large for her petite build. Her dark hair was gathered back and she continuously checked her mobile device as though expecting someone's arrival. Something about her bearing, shoulders slightly curved forward, attempting to appear smaller, brought Emma to mind. The same cautious method of navigating through life, endeavoring to avoid notice. Ethan observed as she selected a carbonated drink, then returned it, examining its cost label. He recognized that sensation intimately, calculating every penny when your supply is limited. The overhead bell chimed once more. A man entered, lanky and tall, sporting an uneven beard with eyes that scanned the establishment too rapidly. He wore a stained baseball cap and a coat with excessive pockets. But his movement pattern, too hasty, too concentrated, made Ethan straighten in his seat. This man wasn't casually shopping. He was advancing directly toward the girl. Ethan noticed it then, the metallic glint in the man's grasp as he reached into his pocket. A blade. The girl remained unaware, her back still facing away as she examined beverages in the cooler. Acting on instinct rather than thought, Ethan placed down his coffee and rose to his feet. His pulse raced in his chest, urging him to flee, to conceal himself, to avoid involvement. But Emma's face filled his thoughts, and he understood he couldn't simply observe passively. Ethan's coffee container tumbled to the ground as he advanced, hot liquid spreading across his footwear. The man was mere paces from the girl presently. Lacking a strategy, Ethan shouted, "Hey!" His voice broke, sounding more juvenile than intended. The man whirled around, and the blade was now plainly visible. A hunting knife with a serrated edge that reflected the store's overhead lighting. The girl also turned, her eyes widening as she observed first the weapon, then Ethan, then the man who now positioned himself between them. "Mind your business, kid," the man snarled. His exhalation reeked of tobacco and something more unpleasant. At close range, Ethan could observe his bloodshot eyes and the slight tremor in his hands. The girl retreated against the refrigerator panels, the frigid glass creating condensation around her shoulders. Her gaze connected with Ethan's, wordlessly begging. The establishment seemed abruptly silent, even the country music diminishing into background sound. I believe you ought to leave her alone," Ethan stated, his mouth parched. His hands were trembling presently as well, and he could sense perspiration forming on his brow. The man released a harsh laugh resembling gravel. "You going to stop me, tough guy?" He advanced one step toward Ethan, the blade directed at his torso. "Walk away now. I won't hurt you too bad." Ethan considered following that exact course. He thought about the $27 in his possession and how he needed to preserve it. He thought about his father's violence and how he'd vowed to himself he'd never engage in combat again. But then the girl produced a quiet sound, something between a whimper and a gasp, and it resembled Emma so closely that Ethan's body reacted before his mind could prevent it. He threw himself forward, targeting not the man himself, but a merchandise rack containing chips positioned between them. It collapsed with a loud crash, packages rupturing and spreading across the surface. The man lost his balance, taken by surprise, and Ethan seized that instant to grasp the girl's arm. "Run!" he shouted, dragging her toward the store's entrance. But the man possessed quick reflexes, seizing Ethan's coat from the rear and jerking him backward. Ethan's footing failed on the dispersed chips, and he dropped hard, wind expelled from his respiratory system. The blade descended, and Ethan lifted his hand defensively. Intense pain penetrated him as the edge slashed across his palm, warm blood flowing onto the filthy linoleum surface. He shouted in agony, pressing his hand against his chest, the wound searing like flames. "What the hell is going on?" The cashier's voice resonated throughout the establishment. He gripped a baseball bat in his hands, emerging from behind the register. The wail of emergency vehicles echoed in the distance, intensifying. Someone must have contacted the police. The knife-wielding man glanced toward the exit, then at Ethan on the ground, blood accumulating beneath his hand. With a profanity, he fled, forcing past the girl and out into the rainy darkness. The subsequent 60 minutes passed in a haze. Police vehicles with rotating lights. Inquiries Ethan couldn't concentrate on responding to. An emergency vehicle where a woman secured his hand in pristine white wrappings that rapidly became crimson. The burning sensation of something they applied to the wound that hurt more severely than the blade had. The medical facility. Ethan occupied an examination table, the paper rustling beneath him. His hand pulsed with every heartbeat. A physician had inserted 7 sutures in his palm and informed him he was fortunate the wound wasn't more profound. A police officer positioned himself in the entrance, notepad held ready. "So, you're just passing through? No address? No parents we can call?" Ethan gazed down at his wrapped hand. "I'm 18, he fabricated. "I'm traveling to my uncle's residence in Carson City." Another fabrication. The officer appeared unconvinced, but before additional questions could be posed, the entrance opened again. The girl from the establishment entered, accompanied by a woman in nursing attire. "This is Sarah," the nurse stated. "She's been waiting to thank you." Sarah's eyes showed redness from weeping, but she appeared more composed presently. "You saved me," she expressed plainly. "That guy, he's been following me for days. I think he knew who my dad is. Thought he could get money." Ethan attempted to smile, but it emerged more like a grimace. "Who's your dad?" "Mike Reeves," she responded, observing his expression for recognition. "People call him Iron Head. He's the president of the local Hells Angels chapter." Ethan's stomach plummeted. He'd heard of the Hells Angels, a motorcycle organization known for being formidable and hazardous. Great, he reflected. Just what he needed. Complications with bikers presently as well. My dad will want to thank you, Sarah said softly. Ethan shook his head negatively. I should get moving once they let me out of here. He examined his wrapped hand. I'm just glad you're okay. But Sarah was already messaging on her device, a slight smile developing on her expression. Trust me, you'll want to meet him. He takes care of people who help his family. 120 minutes later, Ethan exited through the medical facility's main doors, his left hand secured in fresh white wrappings. The analgesics they'd provided him made his head feel cloudy, but at minimum his hand didn't throb as intensely presently. The precipitation had ceased, but puddles still marked the parking area, mirroring the illumination of street lamps. He inhaled deeply the cool nighttime atmosphere, questioning where he would rest. Perhaps he could locate a bus shelter with a protected bench or an around-the-clock laundromat where he could remain until daybreak. He reached in his pocket with his uninjured hand to recalculate his funds. But before he could, a noise made him immobile. It commenced as a quiet rumbling in the distance, resembling approaching thunder. But this wasn't meteorological thunder. It intensified, the profound roaring sound of numerous motorcycle engines approaching closer. Ethan's pulse began accelerating as the initial bikes appeared around the bend, headlights penetrating through the darkness. Additional ones followed, in pairs, until the entire roadway seemed occupied by them. The bikers entered the medical facility parking area in a flawless formation, engines so deafening that Ethan could sense the vibration in his ribcage. There must have been at minimum 30 motorcycles, possibly more, each one carrying a rider in a black leather vest. Hell's Angels, precisely as Sarah had mentioned. They positioned themselves in a semicircular arrangement facing the medical facility entrance where Ethan stood, paralyzed in position. The engines ceased one after another, creating an unsettling silence. Ethan contemplated fleeing, but his legs refused to cooperate. The bikers dismounted their motorcycles, boots crunching on the damp pavement as they established a barrier of leather, denim, and body art. From the group's center, an enormous man stepped forward. He stood well above 6 feet in height with a substantial gray beard and arms decorated with vibrant tattoos. His leather vest displayed patches Ethan couldn't decipher in the poor light, but he comprehended their significance. This man held importance in the organization. You the kid? The large man inquired, his voice profound and coarse like he'd consumed gravel. Ethan nodded affirmatively, his mouth too parched to verbalize. I'm Mike Reeves, the man declared. People call me Iron Head. He scrutinized Ethan from head to toe. Sarah tells me you saved her from a knife attack. I was just there. Ethan succeeded in stating, his voice diminutive against the barrier of bikers. Anyone would have done it. Iron Head negated with his head. No, kid. Most people would have walked away, minded their own business. He extended a massive hand decorated with skull rings. You saved my little girl. Ethan hesitantly clasped the man's hand with his healthy one, attempting not to flinch as the action transmitted a surge of discomfort through his wounded palm. What's your name? Iron Head inquired. Ethan. Where you from, Ethan? Ethan gazed down at his footwear. Nowhere special. Just passing through. Iron Head nodded deliberately. Sarah says you told the cops you're 18 and headed to your uncle's. That true? Warmth ascended in Ethan's face. He parted his lips to justify the fabrication, but something in Iron Head's gaze made him halt. This man would detect if he was deceiving again. No, sir, he confessed. I'm 16. I ran away from home. My dad, Ethan ceased speaking, reluctant to elaborate further. Iron Head seemed to comprehend regardless. You got a place to stay tonight, Ethan? I'll find somewhere, Ethan stated, attempting to project confidence. The large man rotated and signaled to the other bikers. Individually, they approached Ethan. Everyone clasped his hand or patted his shoulder. Some muttered, "Thanks." Others simply nodded with respect visible in their eyes. These were men most individuals crossed the roadway to circumvent, but they were treating Ethan as though he belonged among them. A shorter biker with a crimson beard extracted a bundle of currency from his vest pocket. "We took up a collection," he stated, forcing the money into Ethan's healthy hand. "Enough for a bus ticket anywhere you want to go. Place to stay. Food." Ethan stared at the currency, exceeding anything he'd ever possessed previously. I can't take this," he stuttered. "You can and you will," Ironhead declared firmly. "Hell's Angels take care of their own, and anyone who helps our family becomes family." The other bikers vocalized their concurrence, nodding and crossing tattooed arms across their chests. Besides, Ironhead proceeded, "Sarah would never forgive me if I let the guy who saved her sleep on the street." He positioned a substantial hand on Ethan's shoulder. "My brother owns a garage in town. He's looking for an apprentice, someone to learn the business. Room above the shop comes with the job." Ethan gazed up at the man, uncertain if he was perceiving correctly. "You'd do that for me? You don't even know me." "I know enough," Ironhead stated. "I know you put yourself between my daughter and a knife. That tells me all I need to know about who you are." For the initial time in days, perhaps years, Ethan sensed something resembling hope ignite inside him. It was modest and delicate, but it existed, warming him from within. The morning sunlight penetrated through the clouds as Ethan stood encircled by the bikers. Their leather vests gleamed with patches and pins, each narrating a story Ethan couldn't yet interpret. The medical facility parking area had dried from the previous night's precipitation, vapor ascending from the heated pavement as the day intensified in brightness. "What do you say, kid?" Ironhead inquired. "You want to stick around? Learn a trade?" Ethan examined the currency in his hand, then at the assembly of men who'd provided it to him. Men with hardened faces and compassionate eyes. Men who'd constructed their own variety of family when the world had been harsh to them. "I don't know much about cars," Ethan acknowledged. A biker with silver hair and a scar bisecting his cheek laughed. "That's why it's called learning, boy. Nobody's born knowing how to change oil." Sarah materialized from inside the medical facility, approaching to position herself beside her father. She smiled at Ethan, her eyes still weary, but no longer frightened. "You should stay," she stated. "My Uncle Pete's cool. He taught me how to ride a dirt bike when I was 10. Ethan contemplated the $27 in his pocket, about the bus terminal and all the distance between here and anywhere else, about his father's violent fists and his younger sister Emma, who he'd vowed to arrange transportation for once he established himself somewhere secure. "I think," Ethan articulated slowly, "I'd like to learn about cars." A celebration erupted from the bikers, deep voices calling out welcomes and striking Ethan on the back. For an instant, he worried his sutures might rupture from all the handshakes, but he couldn't cease smiling. "First things first," Ironhead stated when the commotion subsided. "Let's get you some breakfast. No one thinks straight on an empty stomach." They transported him to a diner, not Joe's, but an establishment called Rusty's, where the servers recognized all the bikers by name. Ethan consumed his initial genuine meal in days. Pancakes stacked 4 high, eggs sunny side up, and bacon crisp around the edges. The nourishment filled his stomach, and the companionship filled something else. A hungry void inside him that had been empty for too extended. Following breakfast, they traveled to Pete's automotive shop. Ethan sat behind Ironhead on his enormous motorcycle, gripping tightly as they rumbled through town. The wind rushed past his face, and for the initial time since departing home, he didn't glance over his shoulder, didn't concern himself about who might be pursuing. Pete proved to be Ironhead's younger brother, a man with the identical build but fewer tattoos and a welcoming smile that put Ethan at ease immediately. The garage emitted the scent of oil and metal and arduous labor. Cars in various stages of repair occupied the bays, their components distributed like puzzles awaiting solution. "You any good with your hands?" Pete inquired, then noticed Ethan's bandage and chuckled. "Well, hand. The other one will heal. I used to fix things at home," Ethan stated. "Broken door hinges, leaky faucets, whatever needed doing." Pete nodded, content. "That'll do for a start. You can sweep up today, watch what the guys are doing." Tomorrow we'll see what you remember. The quarters above the garage were compact but sanitary. It contained a bed with clean sheets, a desk, a dresser, and a window that overlooked the street. Ethan positioned his backpack down. Everything he possessed in the world fit within it and occupied the bed's edge. "It's not much," Pete stated from the entrance, "but it's yours as long as you need it. Bathrooms down the hall. Kitchen downstairs has a fridge you can use." "Thank you," Ethan stated, his voice thick with emotion. "For all of this." Pete raised his shoulders. "You saved my niece. Far as I'm concerned, you're family now." He rotated to depart, then halted. "Oh, and Ironhead wanted me to give you this." He handed Ethan a cellular phone, aged but in satisfactory condition. "It's got all our numbers in it. Any trouble, day or night, you call. Someone will come." After Pete departed, Ethan reclined back on the bed, the occurrences of the past 24 hours rotating in his head. From resting in a doorway to possessing a room, employment, and individuals who cared if he was secure. It didn't appear genuine. He activated the phone and located Emma's number in his contacts. He'd committed it to memory before departing home. His finger hovered above the call button as he pondered what to communicate, how to explain everything that had transpired. Ultimately, he maintained it straightforward. "Em, it's me. I'm okay. I found a place. Good people. I'm gonna send you a bus ticket as soon as I save up. Just hang on a little longer." Beyond the window, the sun ascended higher in the atmosphere. Below in the garage, the sounds of tools and friendly voices occupied the air. Ethan's hand still ached from where the blade had sliced him, but for the initial time in years, he sensed the burden lifting from his shoulders. Sometimes, he reflected, you discover family in the most unexpected locations. Sometimes it requires a single moment of courage to transform everything that follows afterward.